Hello, everyone. You're welcome to a brand new program where we'll be taking you through finance, investing in Sharia compliant products, how to manage your finance, like personal finance, Islamic finance. This is our first episode, and today I will be discussing with Dr. Basheer Oshodi, who is the Chief Executive of Trust Autonomy. Today he'll be talking about a case of parallel Istisna'a contract for short. So let's get started. Thank you very much for coming on the program, sir. And happy Ramadan Karim to you.
Thanks, Bukola. Ramadan Mubarak too.
Let us start the conversation. One of the Islamic finance products or instruments is Istisna'a, which is the second sales contract in addition to Salam. Can you elaborate on the Istisna'a process, the Sharia rules, and the general principles guiding it?
Islamic finance, you have equity, you have debt contracts, and there's several other broad categories. But let's concentrate on the sale contract. Now, under the sale contract, there are three broad categories, which is the Muraba, which is a markup sale. We have the Istisna'a, which is a manufacturing sale.
Yeah.
And you have the Salam, which is like a forward sale. Now, if you have to pick the middle one, which is manufacturing sale, right, which is called Istisna'a. Now, traditionally, in those days, they used to have, when people want to maybe make a ring, you want to manufacture something, they will say, okay, let's use some kind of Istisna'a arrangement. So traditionally, or the classical meaning of Istisna'a is to manufacture, to create, to make something based on the custom of the people and all of that. So that was what they were using then. And then, of course, that concept, if you like, moved into finance in a very unique way. To say, I just want to manufacture a house. I want to manufacture shops. I don't want partnership. I just want to buy. So in other words, for Istisna'a now, under Islamic finance, we can then have other two broad categories: classic Istisna'a and parallel. Classic is simple. It's just like saying, hey, Mr. Developer, build 200 shops for me.
Okay.
Machine or somewhere. That's it. It's as simple as that. Build 200 shops for me, and that contract ends there. That's why it's classic. How we're going to sell, whether they're off takers or not, how we're going to sell it, and all of those things will not arise. However, there are some basic features that must be in an Istisna'a contract. They must be defined. What you want to construct, the kind, the type must be established, must be well defined, must be precise, must be definite. The expected quality must also be well established to a very large extent. And the quantity, yes, must also be written and be confirmed that you're building me 200 shops. So it's clear. When you have this clarity, the system then becomes very, very easy. Again, if you're then exposed to such a Istisna'a contract, it's a different question whether you want to then mitigate that construction risk, that build for me, manufacture for me, construct for me. You then be exposed to certain kind of risk, which of course you can take later on. But it's as simple as that. Build for me, deliver to me in 1 year's time, and I'm good to go. Istisna'a is as simple as that, Bukola. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you very much for sharing your perspective on the tenet of Istisna'a. So in the case of parallel Istisna'a, so what are the risk inflation for using sale contract beyond 1 year?
Okay, so now I'm just going to speak from experience, really. So parallel Istisna'a is when you run to Istisna'a in a parallel form. One Istisna'a, let's just say between the bank and ABC Limited, the company that wants the money to build, say, 200 shops. So one Istisna'a is, if you like, one leg Istisna'a, if you like, even the classic Istisna'a, but this time is not classic. But don't forget there are two levels. The second Istisna'a is then that, okay, Mr. Man, Mr. ABC Limited, when you build the shops, can you then say, Mr. Man, I need my off-takers. I need to have 200 off-takers. And then ABC Limited gets 200 off-takers. Now, when you have the 200 off-takers, you then signed another Istisna'a with the 200 off-takers. Now, so let's start to look at it one after the other.
Okay.
If ABC company is been asked to build, ABC company can collect money. Let's assume the money to build the shop is ₦1 billion. ABC company can as well take the money and divert it. So diversion risk. These are ABC company can divert the money. ABC can start the project, use part of the money to buy land somewhere else, or do some other transaction and not finish the project. So you have completion risk. And you can just decide not to finish it. Or you can as well say, okay, no problem. Yes, I want to build, but I've appointed parties to supply cement, iron, gravels, and everything. Doors, windows, either windows. And then at the end of the day, the counterparty takes the money away. So you have counterparty risk. So the money can get lost. To mitigate that risk, you want to put maybe someone in charge as a project manager. If you have an IPM to manage control, if you like control risk, the project manager can manage effectively, monitor disbursement and all of that. But from experience, it doesn't work absolutely that way. Even when you have a project manager on the project can still be uncompleted, especially in Nigeria. So even with the project, even abroad, even in other countries, sometimes you don't want to have something more serious, right? Like an APG in place, or you want to have, if possible, sometimes with bank guarantee, sometimes, right? You want to have a guarantee from a formal entity, right, to ensure that performance is mitigated. Now that solves that problem. Assuming after a year that construction should have been done, the building, the shops, the 200 shops are now standing. They are then still exposed to more risk, which is in the second leg, the parallel paths, with the off-takers. If your off-takers are corporates or a handful of corporates or even one corporate, that off-taker can as well tell you that, hey, you know what, I don't even have money to buy at this time, and they can delay payments, right? So you're exposed to that risk. There could be other risk around, because the thing about having parallel Istisna'a is the fact that the buyer must be able, willing, and should be able to also pay on time as and when due. So if you have a 1 year Istisna'a and the person does not pay as and when due, is a problem. If it's beyond 1 year from experience, it then becomes a bigger problem, because it means that any sale contract that goes beyond a year, especially in our own kind of economy, is a big problem. Maybe if it spills over by a few months, maybe fine or maybe fair. And that's because in the price of whatever money you're going to use to do this Istisna'a can be exposed to deposit risk, or if you like, your pricing risk. Or if you have used the Mudaraba deposit to do it, and it has come at a particular price, that price may change, where the person is investing for just 365 days, and then at the end of the day, come and say, but the construction company needs, it says, oh, there's a variation, or the guy says, oh, but we need to spend additional 6 months on this project, and then the fund now wants to collect our money back. It then means you're under stress. If it doesn't want to collect our money back, it says, okay, but you know what? Rather than give me 15% per annum, right? I want it to be 20% per annum. So that difference then affects you because there's a shift in the entire thing. So as much as possible, all state transactions should be within a year, particularly system. Very difficult. If it doesn't work, they have to consider like a forward Ijara contract in that kind of a case. So back to this situation. Now the off-taker is a corporate. He doesn't have money at that time, so he's unable to pay. Even if the off-taker is a bank, and the bank says, well, I still don't want to pay, I don't have money at this time, it's still possible, we're experiencing it here. Now, if the off-takers are fragmented, they are individuals, it's a better case. So as when you have 200 off-takers, you expect that maybe 5 or 10 or even 20 will not pay on time, or will not even pay at all. You can still live with it, So you're then exposed to risk around the kind of off-taker that you have. You'll have thought the corporate off-taker is the best, but the corporate off-taker can tell you that, hey, yeah, the building is standing, I don't even like this, I don't like that, I'm going to pay now, right? So there are kind of issues that you're then exposed to, which can result into default. Now, defaults, so default can then result into some kind of, if you like, Sharia non-compliance risk. What I mean by that is the building owner can as well say, This is an istisna. I mean, we can't review this contract. That's what Sharia says. The particular case where we had gone to the A's, Advisory Committee of Experts, if you like, the Sharia board, to say, oh, we're boxed in a 2-year istisna contract. Can you allow us shorten the istisna contract? 1. 2, can you allow us reprise the istisna contract? And that's difficult under Sharia. And Sharia scholars said, okay, not a problem, difficult. However, if all the parties can agree, that's the bank and the developers, right? The ABC Limited, for example. If they can agree that you should change the contract terms, mutual agreement by all parties, they can go ahead and change. But can you imagine if you have offered somebody pricing at, say, I don't know, let's just say 15%, and you come back and say, well, I want to change to 25% per annum, that's the cost of the fund. And the person is not going to listen to you. So that's what will happen typically. And then it then means that because of that difference, you're then going to run that business at a loss, right? So as a rule, parallel istisna should always, as much as possible, be short, which is quite difficult, right? Now, there can be some kind of risk on the principal in this case, where you have collected funds at, say, 15%, and the cost has then moved to maybe 25%, within that 2-year period. Just because the project is not completed, I want the owner of the fund to extend the fund by another 6 months or 1 year. It then means that there's going to be a massive loss of about 10% on the second year of the istisna. So these are the major risks in a typical istisna contract.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor. One of the key advantages of an institutional contract, from what you've explained so far, is that it can provide flexibility to the customer, where payments can be made installments, linked to project completion, delivery, or even after project completion. And from what you explained, institutional applications are just for home financing and project finance. But share your thoughts on the theme of this conversation, a case of parallel institutional contract for short. And let us use Nigeria as a case study.
Okay, so, assuming, using Nigeria as a case study makes it interesting. But again, on the second leg of the istisna, do I want to make it, do I want to fragment my offtake arrangement? Do I want to profile 200 off-takers beforehand, and then let the repayment risk be taken by those 200 off-takers rather than by one entity, Yeah, and as I mentioned that, you can as well, if you may default, which is fine, you can still live with it, right? But more interestingly is the fact that all of the off-takers, they can be paying in bits, even during the construction period, which helps you to get cash flow back into the system. Now, again, it's even worse when you have to use an istisna for, if you have to do a sukuk istisna. Because if you do that, it then means that you expect the project to be long, and because of price fluctuations, don't forget that there can be legislative risk. When the Apex Bank, increase the price, it should not affect non-interest finance ordinarily, but because we play in the same markets, it will then have effects. Because people will then feel that, hey, if the Apex Bank is giving a particular rate, they should be able to play above that rate. It then means everybody will shoot up their rates, whether it affects them directly or not, which is that everybody plays in the same market, right? So they're going to use it for a sukuk is world, because sukuk are supposed to be quite long term. So can you imagine doing istisna sukuk for a 3-year project? When there's price movement, you are locked in, and that's a problem. So on the one,
if we are talking about 3-year projects here, can we say it's short-term financing projects or long-term? When we look at the situation of sukuk in Nigeria.
Yeah, so istisna itself is manufacturing sale, right? And it then means that if it's going to be short-term, by short-term of fair, maybe 1 year, which is fair, it then means that you must have some kind of backup in terms of another company that can replace that that project cost, where it spills over 1 year. So that means you must have one or two other parties that quickly bring in cash at the point of maturity so I can remain in the project, or else the fund owners will say, hey, we want to increase the pricing on these Istisna'a. And as a result of that, it will increase the project costs, and then it may become unprofitable because, again, I talked about loss of principal at that time. It becomes a lot more unprofitable. The bigger the project, the more the risk, the more the likelihood that you can enter into a pool of loss of principal, a massive pool of loss of principal, just because our player is too big. And don't forget under Sukuk, don't forget there's no secondary market as such or acceptable by Sharia if you want to use sale contract, because you're going to be creating secondary market on the receivables, which a lot of schools of thought frown out, So for your Muraba, for your Istisna'a, for your Salam, the secondary market is very scarce, right? It's difficult to achieve. Again, it can be acceptable in some other jurisdictions, but I know the Maliki school would not really go for that. So those are some of the challenges. So the thing is, for Istisna'a, it's always good to keep it as short as possible, right? It's good to have funds that can match that appropriately. The price for 2 years, I have 2-year fund. It's for 1.5 year, 1.5 year fund. So I can match it perfectly well. In the absence of that, it then exposes you to several risks, each risk spilling over to the other risk. And before you know what's happening, you're dealing with like 20 set of risk that is going to be very difficult to manage.
Okay, so Doctor, as we wrap up this conversation, you've talked about Istisna'a as a parallel for contract shop. So what would be your recommendation on its benefits, its values?
The good thing about Istisna'a is the fact that there's a particular project we did a while ago where we gave Istisna'a contract to off-takers on day one.
Yeah.
On the back of that Istisna'a contract, even before the project started, they started to pay. They started to pay us back gradually and steadily, which then created cash flow, which I think is the best kind of offtake arrangement. It was like a one-way Istisna'a, right? However, it was with the off-takers. So it means you can create like own finance facility, what you call mortgage in the conventional space, using Istisna'a contract. Now, there's a challenge. Sharia scholars can then argue that if you do that, when the project is completed, can you then continue to use that same contract for a completed project? No, you can't. So Sharia scholars would advise that immediately the project is completed, you have to switch to another contract, say an Ijara contract or Ijara Waitina contract, Pension Musharaka contract, as the case may be. So you can only use that Istisna'a contract while the construction is ongoing, and it ends at that point, right? So you can then terminate it and move to another contract. Unfortunately, you cannot merge all of those contracts together in one. So immediately we're done with this, we're going to move to the other. That's not going to happen, right? So you have to conclude one first, you terminate it, it ends, you then create a second contract when the asset of the shops starts to exist.
Very insightful, sir. Indeed, apart from Ijara and other non-interest finance instruments, Istisna'a has also been widely used in the housing finance sector, and we hope to see more of this.
Yeah, thank you very much, Buka.
Thank you very much, Dr. Basheer. It was nice having this conversation with you. Have a great day, sir.
Yeah, my pleasure. You too.